on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
Wild black walnuts, something that's been foraged for a long time. People are very familiar with English walnuts. Black walnuts are native to the United States.
The way the world usually goes is somebody looks at this and they go, okay, the yield is 7%. How do we get it up? How do we tinker? How do we change it? I like that you're working with the native plant still.
That unique flavor of wild black walnuts tastes like a memory, tastes like home, tastes like something delicious.
So people still have time to get involved, right, in bringing these to some of these hulling stations.
It's $20 per 100 pounds to start with on October 1st.
There's a black walnut protein powder?
Black walnut ice cream, black walnut oil, baked goods, confections, eat them hand to mouth.
I saw something about the Statue of Liberty being cleaned with black walnut hulls.
It is a part of American life, and if it says black walnuts, those nuts probably came from us.
Episode 104 of the WildFed podcast, The Black Walnut Harvest, an American Tradition, with Brian Hammons, is brought to you by Surthrival. Hey, proper digestion is critical to good health and strong immunity. That's why I'm a huge believer in using Surthrival's colostrum daily in my smoothies, and it's why I take Surthrival digestive bitters with my meals. In addition to being 3 times more effective against flu than vaccines in vivo studies with high-risk patients, bovine colostrum is an outstanding supplement for restoring the delicate lining of your digestive tract, making it a great health support to anyone looking to improve their digestion. And herbal bitters help increase the flow of bile and other digestive juices, helping ensure we extract more nutrition from the food we eat. Right now until November 4th, Surthrival's flagship colostrum products and herbal digestive bitters are on sale, and the coupon code TREAT20, that's TREAT 20, gets you 20% off those products at surthrival.com. Hunting can be an incredible tool for personal transformation, helping you discover more about yourself, your environment, the animals you share this world with, and even helping you develop a deeper understanding of life and death itself. Hunting can help you find your place in the community of life. But you can hunt all your life and never find that kind of personal transformation. It takes deliberate practice, awareness, and sometimes even initiation. That's why my friend Monsell Denton created Sacred Hunting. Sacred Hunting brings new or experienced hunters out onto the landscape to stalk, harvest, and field dress animals in a retreat setting in conjunction with sweat lodges, plant medicine ceremonies held on separate days from the hunt, of course, and a strong intention setting that prepares hunters for a lifelong spiritual relationship with themselves, the land, and the animals they hunt. If you want to learn to hunt in this way, check out sacredhunting.com. There's only a few spots available on each hunt, so go to sacredhunting.com and complete their 2-minute application. Discounts are available if you let them know you heard about them on the WildFed podcast. Again, go to sacredhunting.com to learn more about Monsell Denton and Sacred Hunting. Go to episode 59 of the WildFed podcast. Again, go to sacredhunting.com and you can learn more about Monsell and Sacred Hunting on episode 59 of the WildFed podcast. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. Well, I absolutely loved recording today's interview. It's with Brian Hammons, CEO and president of Hammons Black Walnuts, the country's largest commercial producer of finished black walnuts. Black walnuts, of course, are a wild food, very different from the English walnuts most of us are familiar with and sourced from nut trees native to North America. Each year, Hammons buys millions of pounds of black walnuts from foragers all over the middle of the country through an innovative network of buying and hulling stations they set up each harvest season. Brian is passionate about black walnuts, just like his father and his father's father were, and he and his company embody the noble, but no longer so common traits of hard work and work ethic, good stewardship, family tradition, and transparent business practices. And all that comes through in the way he talks about what they do at Hammons. I'm putting this episode out today because there's still time to get involved in this year's harvest, whether it's just for your own or your family's personal use, black walnuts are an incredible wild food, or in case you're interested in trying your hand at making a few extra bucks in the commercial harvest. If you've never tried black walnuts, consider giving them a try. As you'll hear in this interview, even if you don't live in a place where they grow, black walnuts can be found in a surprising number of stores and products once you know where to look, and all of them are sourced wild right here on the North American landscape. That's pretty unique in a marketplace dominated by domesticated, orchard-grown nuts. I often quote the writer and foraging icon Sam Thayer here on the show. He talks about what he calls ecoculture, a more ancient and sustainable alternative to agriculture. He's quick to point out that with the right shifts in landscape management, viable wild food sheds are possible on a scale we can't really imagine at present. To me, Hammons represents a company that's doing precisely that, creating a viable market for a wild food sustainably for decades. Not only that, but it's a win-win-win because as the customer gets a healthy, sustainable wild food, Hammons prospers and so do the foragers who supply them with their raw materials. Supporting companies like theirs moves us towards a new or perhaps older way of engaging with the landscape for our food needs. It's exciting to me and it opens up a world of possibilities. So here's to happy foraging. Brian Hammons, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Man, I have been aware of your company for many, many years now. And I spoke to a friend the other day. I said, I'm having Brian Hammons on the show. And he said, well, they got to be the largest company in the wild food industry. And I thought, besides maybe some of the seafood companies that Wild Harvest, in the plant world, you guys are kind of the biggest thing in wild foods, wouldn't you say?
Well, in terms of black walnuts, we certainly are. Wild black walnuts, something that has been foraged for a long time. We're in our 75th year, actually, and so we're thankful to be able to keep going and keep offering a market for these wild nuts.
And you are, third generation involved in the business?
Yes, I am. My grandfather started in 1946.
So awesome, man. So 7 decades plus you guys have been going, and with a product that, I just don't see commercially anywhere except through you guys. I'm sure you must have some competitors in the game, but you guys are definitely the dominant brand, eh?
Well, it's a hard industry to be in. People are very familiar with walnuts, the English walnuts, what that is. It's in California, and they're grown in orchards and very popular worldwide. And a very big industry, a lot of growers and a lot of processors. Black walnuts are native to the United States, native to Middle America, grows from about eastern Kansas through Missouri is the largest state, all the way east to Virginia and up into New Jersey and northeast just a little bit too has some. So it's a product that folks who have grown up in those areas, the Midwest and eastern states, may have picked up black walnuts. If they grew up in rural areas particularly, they probably picked up nuts and may have cracked some, and grandma made cakes with them, and they've got a long tradition of recipes and uses of black walnuts and picking up black walnuts to make money. So it's been a foraged crop for a long, long time, and I think there's some recipes that supposedly Lewis and Clark developed when they were traveling through Missouri a long, long time ago. Yeah, we've got a bread that supposedly is that way. So
wow,
it's been a forage crop for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I only recently learned, and we'll get more into this later, but I only recently learned about how you guys actually get your harvest, which is through, is it largely through the efforts of foragers who bring those into your hulling stations?
Yeah, it really is. People pick them up in yards where they're growing in their backyard, front yard. Try to get them out of the yard so they can mow. In fields, pastures, fields out there. Usually not so much in the woods. The black walnut trees growing in the woods are straight and tall, don't produce many nuts. Those are the good wood-producing trees. But for nuts, they need to have some space out there. But a lot of fields here in Missouri particularly, you'll be driving along and look out into a field and see all black walnut trees because they've thinned out everything else. They graze cattle in there. The trees are wide spacing, but they realize the value of those trees for nut production. They pick those nuts every year and sell them and make a little bit of extra money.
Yeah, and that part's really exciting to me to learn more about. I'm picturing, because I'm in Maine and we're outside of the native range of the species, which is, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's Juglans nigra.
That's right.
And I'm thinking about one specimen downtown where I live, big, spread out branches, and it always carpets their lawn and the nuts, so they never mind if I want to come gather them. I just didn't realize there was like a secondary market that I could
Yeah.
put them into, and that part's really fascinating. So tell us a little bit about how all that works, because it seems to me a monumentous amount of coordination.
Well, it really is, and that's one of the challenges in our industry. One of the things that keeps it the size that it is. But we rely on people to pick up those nuts, and then we try to provide a buying station that's pretty close to most of where the nuts are growing wild. We have about 200 to 230 buying stations every year,
Wow.
and about 120 or so of those are in Missouri. The rest are scattered throughout eastern Kansas, Iowa, Arkansas. Usually Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan have quite a number of stations. But the trees go all the way to Pennsylvania and Virginia. We don't have any that far east right now, and we really would like to. We keep getting calls from people in those areas. Hey, don't you have a buying station close to me? I've got 30 trees, and they're really producing a lot. We'd love to be able to do that. It's a long ways away, and freight becomes a bit of an issue. One of these days we
Yeah.
might be able to do that, but we put a buying station out there. We set those up at grocery stores, feed stores, places that people deal that might have black walnut trees, where it would be compatible with their business. Feed stores deal with farmers. Garden centers deal with people looking for things in their yards and the lawns and places like that. And sometimes it's just an individual, a farmer. A lot of Amish folks, very hardworking.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
They have a buying station. They provide that market for their neighbors and themselves also. So it's a whole lot of different types of people, types of businesses that buy nuts. We have a commission arrangement. We provide the machine, the bags, put the nuts in, some advertising support, and they open their place of business to friends and neighbors and people who pick up the nuts and bring them in. And so they provide the labor. And during October and early November, it is a busy time, and some
I
of those
bet.
stations get really busy. They'll have
Do they?
lines an hour long of people waiting to sell the
Really?
nuts. And it's just an amazing thing. And we're just now getting into the heart of the black walnut season, where the nuts are beginning to be on the ground with some nice days. There will be a lot of people picking them up and bringing them in. We saw a line here in Stockton yesterday of, I don't know, half hour long, something like that. And that's just the beginning of it. So between now and probably 1st of November, we'll have some really big days. And what I love is walking down the lines and talking to the people and hearing their stories of where they pick up the nuts and who they pick them up with, families and neighbors, and what do they do with the money, and just some really heartwarming stories of how this makes a difference in their lives and how they enjoy it, and they're teaching work ethic to their kids, and they like to take a bag of nuts home with them that they've picked up and crack them themselves.
Oh,
Sometimes
cool.
grandpa likes to sit around the fire and cracking black walnuts, and grandma will make the cake for him. Just, a lot of wonderful things like that. I remember a banker telling me years ago that when he was little, they bought coats and boots for the family with the black walnut money, and that really made a difference to them. And so he still has great recollections on that. I had a former governor in Missouri that sent me a message a few years ago with a copy of a check made out to his son, saying that the latest generation of my family has made his first dollar picking up black
Oh,
walnuts.
no. Yes, I
The
love it.
boy was 3, so
Yeah, there's something really nice about being in the world of foraging, is getting to see how individuals and families make these connections to the natural world with each other and have like an opportunity to do something outside of the typical kind of box store stuff that's gotten so common. So I'm curious about folks who are gathering them. What are the kind of reasons that you hear? Is it often a monetary motivation? Are there folks who actually are able to make a significant amount of money? Or is this largely like family tradition? What are the things that are really driving people?
You've listed most of them right there, and we've done some surveys with folks who bring in a lot of nuts, and we found that the dollars are a significant motivator. Also, getting them out of the yard is one
Yeah,
of the
yeah, right.
motivators too, as well as tradition. They do this every year. they love to get out of doors and just enjoy nature during the fall seasons. And sometimes teaching work ethic to their next generation
Yeah.
of kids. All of those things are really driving it. Sometimes the dollars are a motivator, but people recognize as they're doing it that there's some quality of life
Yeah,
that they're
there's more to
building
it than the
into.
money, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they really enjoy it. And when there's a short crop of nuts, they really miss it.
Yeah, I bet. I was just reading in preparation to talk to you from the book Nature's Garden, which is my friend Sam Fair. He's sort of probably the leading foraging writer in the United States. And I was reading his chapter on the plant, and he was saying, even just hand gathering, a person can easily gather a couple of bushels an hour, no problem, a few bushels an hour. I mean, these are, I would say, with their hull on, they must be bigger than about the size of a chicken egg, but more round, bigger than a golf ball for sure, huh?
Oh yes, more like a tennis ball.
Yeah.
That would be a comparable
Okay.
sized, I would say, would be a good
Wow.
gauge. But yeah, definitely bigger than an egg and
Yeah,
different,
at least at
bigger than a
least a
golf ball.
racquetball, right? So
Yeah,
so
right.
y- and but I've been watching some videos and seeing that people are going around with those nut wizards and zipping them up
Hmm.
like that as well. And I feel kind of naive. I never realized the machine existed, but I saw something I was watching you actually on a news show, and there was a machine that drove up a vehicle that grabbed a hold of a tree and vibrated it, and it causes all
Yeah,
the nuts to fall. So I didn't,
yeah.
I saw that. I thought, oh yeah, that obviously exists, but I wasn't aware of it. But that those kind of methods, besides just hand picking for the folks who are really trying to get a big load of them, that stuff works, huh?
It does, and we learn a lot from the folks in the larger nut industries in California and down in Texas and Georgia and the pecan industry, where they've got, and especially in pecans, they've got both wild native trees and some orchard grown trees. We don't have
Oh,
very
right.
many orchard grown trees in black walnuts. We're looking at long term nut supply, having some of those, but it's still tiny, tiny, tiny part of what we do, and you can have a grove of native trees, wild trees, and if you have enough of them, it justifies bringing in a tree shaker. And
Tree
then
shaker
maybe
is what
a
it's called.
mechanical harvester, tree shaker, right? Or
Yeah.
and a mechanical harvester that picks up the nuts. And we even developed a harvester huller that has a huller attached to the harvester, and that's pretty
Wow.
slick. It picks up everything. We find that the nut wizard is probably the most practical thing for
Yeah.
folks to use.
Pick
It
one up at the
it makes
hardware
it,
store and
yeah,
they're
yeah,
cheap.
$50 or so, and pick up
Hmm.
the nuts that way, and that helps folks pick up a lot more. And some people have a system. They'll have a wire that helps empty the nut wizard, have that attached to their trailer or their pickup truck, and they'll do it very quickly, pick up nuts, dump the nut wizard, and get into an area that has a lot of nuts, and they can make $25 or $30 an hour,
Oh, wow.
which
No
is
kidding.
pretty good.
Yeah,
But
that's cool.
if you just pick up one at a time, put it in the bucket, and reach over and pick up another one, put it in the bucket, it might take a while to get $100 worth.
Yeah, I get you. As a forager who does a lot of wild food processing at home, black walnuts present some unique challenges when you're trying to take them all the way from harvest through to fully processed in your own home. Because as you know, there's some intense, I guess they must be essential oils that are in the husk there. And the ability to kind of get under your nails, burn your skin a little bit, the sort of as they sit around a little bit, kind of exuding like an ink that can stain things. And I thought, oh, it must be so nice to just run them through a huller, because I've always had to do, it's like let them dry, put them in a gunny sack, run them over with a car or a truck a bunch of times to break the hulls away, and then hammering them one at a time or getting some real fancy nutcracker. So talk to us about what the process looks like when somebody hands them off to you.
And we do it in a more automated way as well as we can with large volumes. And all the things that you mentioned are things that people do when they're at home, just some way to get that hull off and some way to crack the nut. And there are nut crackers that are developed to make it a little bit easier and things like that. But what we do is people pick up the nuts. And they do get stained on their hands when they do that most of the time,
Yeah, that,
and it
that,
does wear off.
yeah.
But they do that, and the nuts come into our buying station to the hulling location. When the nuts go through the hulling machine, they're put into mesh bags so that they can dry. And then they're brought to our plant here in Stockton, Missouri. Small town, rural community, about 2,000 people. It's a county seat town. It's a great little place here at the edge of the Ozarks. A lot of black walnut trees all around. So that's where my grandfather started with his grocery store. So the nuts come in here, and we bring them all in during about a 6-week period of time. We store them in open air barns. They're covered on top so the rains can't get to them, but open on
And
the
at this
sides
stage,
so the air
they
can
look
dry.
like they look a little bit like somebody might imagine a walnut in its shell. Obviously, it's a different
That's
shape
right.
and it's not as quite as crenulated looking, but these are out of the hull but still in the shell
That's
at this
right.
stage. Okay.
Right. The green and black hull is off,
Yep.
and the black walnut has a very rough outer shell, very different than the English walnut
Hmm.
from California. But the native American black walnut has a very rough, kind of a dark shell. And some of the hull material may stick to that occasionally. We'll take that off before we process the nut. But we store them that way. We now have a bin system for some bulk nuts also and to dry them in that way as well. But you've got to get the nuts dried to store them for a long period of time. We'll store those for a year, sometimes a little bit more.
Oh,
And
wow.
as long as we can get them dried, they're really in good shape. So
Yeah.
people at home, if they have a bag full of black walnuts, first of all, store them in a place that's well ventilated, where they can get plenty of air, but also the squirrels can't get to them. That's one of the real that's the
Yeah,
real
yeah,
competitor out there is that squirrel.
sure.
So then we process the nut here. We'll process about 100,000 pounds in a day when we're really
Oh,
running full
wow.
out.
No kidding. Wow.
And that's quite a bit. That's about
Yeah,
how
it
much
is.
my grandfather processed this first year in
Wow.
1946.
Wow. Hey, tell me a bit. I want to go back just a second and hear about. Well, we got to hear the other half, but I want to hear about him and why. How did he get into this? It's a kind of an obscure business, so I'm very curious. Obviously, this is a different era we're talking about. People they were a little closer to the land, better understanding of native species. Food was not so easily had over the counter the way it is today, right? So much excess calories everywhere. But what led to all this, and how did you end up in the black walnut industry?
Yeah. Well, my grandfather came back from World War II. He was in the Navy there, and he had previously had a grocery store in Stockton. So he came back here and had a reputation as a person who was reliable and did a good job, worked hard. And there was a company in Virginia that was looking for someone to buy black walnuts in Missouri because they had a short crop in Virginia. So somehow they get in contact with my grandfather, Ralph Hammons, and he bought several nuts and shipped them east and kind of looked around and said, there's a lot of black walnut trees around here.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an opportunity for me to set up a business here. So he went to Tennessee and bought a black walnut nut cracker in 1946 and brought it home. And he was headed home with the cracking machine, and his right hand
What
person.
scale of machine are you talking about here?
It was cracking rolls that are maybe 18 inches in diameter, something like that. Two of
Okay. Yeah.
those in a
Hmm.
machine that just kind of going together, just one
Okay.
cracking machine. And Merle Roberts was his assistant. And as they were driving home, Ralph said, "Well, Merle, do you think we can make this work?" And Merle looked and said, "Well, Ralph, you bought the machine. We've got to make it work." And I love that story. And my dad tells it that they did. And they came home, and he had a lot of good help, a lot of good people in this rural community that knew how to work and were inventive. There weren't any graduated engineers in the
Mm,
group, but they were practical engineers. And we've really relied on practical engineers all of our history to
amen.
help design and build and repair and fix machines and keep us going. So we're thankful for all of that and all that practical knowledge that they bring.
Yeah, I was wondering about the equipment today, and is it over-the-counter equipment that works with other nuts, or are you having to work with specialized equipment that's been built
Yeah.
specifically to the specs you need?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's both. The black walnut is unique. God's created this black walnut differently than other nuts, and it's the same as it was back in my grandfather's day.
Yeah.
But we use a cracking machine that is unique to black walnuts because it's got such a thick shell and an inside shell structure. It's very different than the English walnut with a thin shell.
That
And
you can pop out whole halves, like, well, you can pop out a
exactly.
half of a walnut out of an English walnut, but it's harder. You got to get pieces when you start to take apart a black walnut hull in my experience, or shell in my
That's
experience.
right. That's right. It's big pieces, medium pieces, little pieces. So you can't use that cone cracker that they use in English walnuts. You can't use
Okay.
the individual nut cracker like pecans where you just hit it on the end and it'll break. Our yield, our nut meat yield, is only about 7 to 7.5% of what we buy. That's different.
Wow, no
So that's
kidding.
much lower. The other nuts are more like 50% to 55% on
Oh,
pecans.
neat.
It just, yeah, huge difference. And
So
so,
you're buying
uh,
a lot of material that is not food. You're paying
that's
by the
right.
pound for it. Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
That's why the price for black walnuts may seem a little bit low in comparison with the grocery store price for the nut meats. Well, there's just not a lot of nut meat
Yeah.
in that nut.
Right.
So we're buying moisture, we're buying hull debris, we're buying shell, and a little bit of nut meats that we're able to convert into something that's really tasty.
Yeah. Yeah. I get really excited about this because what I've noticed, the way the world usually goes is somebody looks at this and they go, okay, the yield is 7%. How do we get it up? How do we tinker? How do we change it? How do we grow them to be different? And before you know it, you have something that's usually higher maintenance, lower nutrition, has now specific pests. You get into all these problems. And I like that you're working with the native plants still. I was just out on Standing Rock Reservation with the Dakota out there, and come back here and I've got a real interest in Lakota language. And so I looked it up today because, when it's like, okay, this is a native species, there must be Lakota names. And I actually found two. One is Gamahu and the other one is Chansapa. And those are both Lakota words for black walnut. And I thought, oh, that's neat that there are
Ah,
native names for them, because they would have obviously known the plant. And the fact that you're working with that same species today that's just fascinating to me because, like I said, typically what you see is it's like the Purdue chicken. It doesn't really resemble the natural chicken people imagine anymore. So I think it's neat you guys have built equipment to work with this rather than try to rebuild the plant to work with the equipment, if that makes
It,
sense.
it is, and we do find some black walnuts that seem to have a little thinner shell than others, and that's great. That's
Pretty
helpful.
exciting, right?
Uh, it's
Yeah.
right. Hey, bring more of those in, please. And so, but overall, we work with the wild nuts that people just pick up, and whatever they are, they come
Yeah.
in, and so everything's on average. We do have some machines that we've learned from other tree nut industries that will work well with black walnuts too. Once we get the nuts cracked. Then the separation from the shell, the inspection, certainly the boxing process. There's some machinery out there that we incorporate into our business that is used in other industries as well. But the initial part of it is all custom made, just by us or for us, and then we implement everything else in a system, in a process that fits what we need here.
I recommend people go over to your website and check out there's a video there where you can see the process.
Yeah,
You guys are
yeah.
black-walnuts.com, I believe is the website.
That, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And
Black hyphen
yeah,
walnuts, we call it. Yeah.
yeah. So you've got that video there, and I was like, oh, there's real humans on the line, like picking through those nut meats, right? And picking out any shell fragments and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I really like that,
Yeah, there really is, and that's the final inspection. We have machines that use infrared light and send out a burst of air and kick out a shell, and that's
Oh,
some
cool.
technology that's really helped us a lot to be able
Yeah.
to process more nuts and get a cleaner shell, a cleaner product, and basically guarantee that you really shouldn't find a shell in a black walnuts package, and it really improved our quality. But we still have to have people. Doing that last inspection, the machine might miss something, and there are some nuts that might look good to a machine that a person knows are not going to taste good. So
Right,
they're able
right.
to pick those out before we box them.
How many of these are you gonna how many pounds of hulled nuts are you gonna buy this year, do you think? Or like what would you estimate?
Oh, you know what? I would love to say 25 million pounds this
Wow.
year, which would be a little above average. and we need them. If we get to 30 million pounds, that's just a real blessing. That'd be wonderful. We'd be thankful for that. Last year we had about 11.5 million pounds. That sounds like a lot of nuts,
It does
but
sound like a lot.
we full capacity here. We'll shell about to 24 million pounds a year.
Wow.
So we had to run at slower capacity, and we ran out of nuts also, which it kind of hurts our workers and our little community here, and um, just it's not good thing for long term. But the black walnut is so erratic. It is an alternate bearing crop. It seems like just any individual tree seems to have alternate characteristics, but the overall crop also seems to have some alternate fluctuations. We had a record crop in 1999 was 49 million pounds.
Oh
Now that's a
wow!
lot of black
That you bought.
walnuts
You guys bought
that we that
49
we
million.
bought. Yes,
Wow.
that's
No
that's
kidding.
much less than what they get in California, which is over 1 billion pounds. But that's a whole other world
Of the English walnut you're talking
of
about.
the English one, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, and different variety and all that. But 49 million pounds. The next year was 9 million
Oh
pounds.
yeah. Yeah. Sure.
So
Makes
the
sense.
average is pretty good,
Yeah. Right.
but the extremes are sometimes harder to deal with. But that's part of what we deal with and what we've learned to
Yeah.
handle over the years. And frankly, probably one reason that we're still here because we've learned to deal with those things when others who were shelling black walnuts maybe 40 or 50 years ago are long gone.
There were other players in the market before, huh?
There were, and there were a handful, and for different reasons, business reasons, generational succession reasons, they're no longer there.
Yeah. I've been wondering, I want to kind of want to visit one of these stations because when I pick up a black walnut, first I love when I'm walking around, I don't realize it at first because they're so big. It's like you notice under your foot if you step on one. And then you pick that thing up and kind of rub that outer husk and smell it. And there's just that beautiful citrusy smell in the shell. So I'm imagining those hulling stations must just have that smell real present.
They do. There's a lot of that there, and to me, I just love it when the first nuts start to fall, and usually late September, pick one up and smell it. Oh yeah, remember the
Yeah.
smell of that?
Yeah.
That's so good.
It's
Now,
a
well, it's kind of like the pork producers. The smell of hog manure is money to them. Well, no, I think black walnut
Yeah.
smells better than that. So, uh,
Yeah, it does. Because I'll keep one with me all day sometimes, just keep pulling it out of my pocket to smell it. It's just got one of those really pleasant things, or rubbing it between my hands. And then the nuts themselves, I notice you guys market it as like bold flavor. I want to talk about the flavor of black walnut because for folks who are used to the English walnut or maybe the pecan or something like that, very different flavor. Like you say, much bolder. Sometimes reminds me of, I remember being in northern Thailand and drinking a lychee wine one night. It kind of has these fruity acetone notes in there, is how I would describe it. But how do you guys describe it to folks? We'll get right back to the show in a moment. But first, if you still haven't seen season 1 of the WildFed TV show, you can now stream all 10 episodes on demand at myoutdoortv.com. Myoutdoortv.com is Outdoor Channel's premium online subscription service. They host thousands of episodes of hunting and fishing content, making this a great subscription service for anyone interested in the outdoors. But if you just want to see WildFed, grab yourself a free trial subscription and then check out all 10 episodes at no charge. If you decide to keep it, it's just $9.99 a month. We're currently in production for season 2 of WildFed, which is shaping up to be an awesome season of new episodes, and they'll start premiering on the Outdoor Channel in 2022. Hey, thanks again for all your incredible support. Now, back to the show.
we have several different things that we talk about. Some we try to characterize the flavor as bold, earthy, I think is one of the good
Sure.
descriptor. Robust,
Yeah, definitely.
natural, because there is a
Mhm.
naturalness to that
Mhm.
bold, robust flavor. Wild, I think, has a descriptor that seems to fit black walnuts also. And one of the interesting things we did years ago was we asked people, how do you describe that unique flavor of wild black walnuts? And they would come back with things from their experiences. It tastes like something delicious, tastes like a memory.
Yeah,
It
right.
tastes like home in the case of people who are out away from their home, maybe somebody in the
Yeah.
military service, and that just tugs at your heart when you think of folks that connect black walnuts with the memories that they have, and with fond things that they recall that they love to experience, just part of life.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful we can do that, and we can keep providing a market for these wild black walnuts people pick up, and the products that connect with folks in such a special way.
The products that you could order, like let's say on your website, are not don't represent the entire market, right? So you guys must have your nut meat products, but then you must sell into secondary markets as well because black walnuts end up in confections, ice creams, things like that. Like
Yes.
how does all that work?
Right. Yeah. Well, we shell the black walnuts, and we put them in 35-pound boxes, and we typically ship them that way to customers that use them in different ways. Of course, we package them in our brand and sell them in grocery stores and online that way. But we supply more volume of our product to companies that make ice cream with them. So black walnut ice cream is popular in some regions.
I've
Baskin
heard as
Robbins
much
has
as
a
like
great one.
50% of the crop. Is that true?
Close to, yeah, yeah, close to that.
Wow. Where do
And
you
then
get
we,
so who's got a brand of ice cream that we could try that would have your walnuts in there? Because I've never seen a black walnut ice cream, anywhere locally at least.
yeah, well, Baskin Robbins
No way.
has it regionally. In some places
Okay.
they do. Bluebell is one very popular brand in the
Okay.
South, particularly in the Southeast. That's very good. And in the Midwest, we have Highland and Prairie Farms and Belfonte. Dean Foods has, well,
Oh,
what
wow.
used to be Dean.
Yeah.
Mayfield
Okay.
is in Tennessee. They're pretty strong. Kroger has a black walnut ice cream that they sell in the Kroger stores. Safeway also has a black walnut ice cream. So those two chains cover a large part of the United States with their distribution.
You just surprised me. These are pretty big names. I was thinking they must be small mom and pop or boutique things
What's
because
that too? Mhm.
yeah, I've never seen any of these. So these are things that tend to be more regional or, they don't make it all the way up here to Maine anyway. People might not know what they are, I guess.
That's right. Yeah, New England really is an area that it doesn't have a lot of distribution of black walnut ice cream. It's not a flavor that's quite as familiar up there. But when folks
Yeah.
get down in the Midwest and certainly in the South, it's very familiar. Um, and sometimes the inner cities areas in Chicago, particularly, black walnut is a very popular flavor. So that works out real well.
From people growing up
Other
with it or something?
Yeah, yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
And so we see in our store here 2 or 3 brands of black walnut ice cream on the shelf, and it's always black walnut, not walnut.
Yeah,
So if you go into a restaurant and a chef is making something creative using black walnuts, well, that's really special.
yeah.
If it's not black walnuts, if it says walnuts, well, it's the
It's
regular
English
English
walnuts.
walnuts, mild
Yeah,
flavor, good still, but mild flavor. If it says black walnuts, they have done something really special with it, and they have paid something for it. So we sell also to companies that put it into their brand packages, like Diamond
yep.
or
Diamond
Best
does,
Choice.
really?
Yeah, Diamond is one of our good customers.
Okay,
They
because again, I
certainly do.
associate them with the English walnuts, right?
Right, right. They do their English walnuts, but they also package other nuts in the baking aisles in some of the grocery stores around the country. Same thing with Fisher. Fisher brand has plants that they process their own nuts, but they also buy our black walnuts and sell them in their
Okay,
brand. Best Choice. You've got a lot
really?
of regional nut brands that may be out there. So if it says black walnuts, those nuts probably came from us.
Yeah,
So
no
we're
kidding.
probably the source right here in the Ozarks. Yeah.
Man, I'm gonna be because I travel a lot making my TV show, and I'm gonna start looking for these products because it would be really neat to be able to pick something like that up. I guess I get really jazzed by the idea of wild foods being tucked into the domesticated food supply, into the agricultural system. I just think it's neat that there's this taste of wildness still present in the American diet occasionally,
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
that part's really neat.
yeah. There is, there really is, and I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing, emphasizing the wild foods. And so many times people think that in order to get wild foods, they've got to go out and forage in the woods, and that is true to a large extent. But there are some places that you can find wild foods in your own local grocery store, and black
Hmm.
walnuts is one of those examples.
One of the other things that I've learned, I've just been studying wild foods for many years now, and one of the things that you consistently see when you compare things, for instance, if you were to compare like an agricultural blueberry to a wild blueberry, is the wild blueberry is usually going to be higher in vitamins, it's going to be higher in polyphenols, it's going to be higher in all of these antioxidants. One of the things that I read recently about black walnut is that it's the highest protein of any tree nut. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, it
Yeah,
is,
it's so
and
cool,
the
man.
statistics show that the studies, the nutritional analysis shows that black walnuts have more protein than any other tree nut.
It's
Almond is
bizarre.
typically
Wow.
thought of as a lot of protein, and it does.
Yeah.
But black walnuts are just a
Yeah.
little bit more.
Is there any black walnut butters out there?
There can be those would be more specialty created. There's not really a
Yeah.
black walnut butter on the market as such. There is black walnut oil, and
Oh yeah, no
we
kidding. Does it retain that fragrance?
it has a roasted flavor and
Okay.
aroma because they toast the nuts first before they
Okay.
extract the oil. And they have to actually blend it with a little bit of English walnut oil to get the oil extracted. It's just got a different texture,
Right.
but you get a definite toasty black walnut aroma and flavor from using that oil. The byproduct of that process is a powder that's a protein powder that's just starting to get some attention. It's
There's a
60%
black
protein.
walnut protein powder?
There is, yeah.
No
We've got it
way.
on our website now, and we're
You
starting to
do?
talk to
Okay.
some
I'm
folks
going
who
there
make
now. I want to
some.
talk to you after the show
Yeah,
about
okay.
that.
Smoothies and things like that, yeah.
Yeah, you're speaking my
Protein bars.
language, man. I got a company that would be very interested in some of that. So,
There we go. Okay, we'll talk.
yeah, no, that's really cool. But tell me more about it. So that's like
Mhm.
a protein that you'd put into the blender with your smoothie
Yeah,
ingredients.
yeah, right. Or a protein bar that they want to have a certain amount of protein, but they want to have a nice texture to it too. You don't have to use very much black walnut protein powder to get the a good like 10, 11 grams of protein in that bar. You
Wow.
can use some other things and give it a little nicer texture and flavor
Yeah, that's
with
so
other
cool.
proteins.
I've got a friend who a chef, Alan Burgo, out in Wisconsin, and he, obviously there's a quite a harvest out there too. I assume he works with them, and recently had several recipes in his book, and some of them included he was working with the hulls themselves. In their unripe kind of form. And I got me thinking about what to do with the hulls. And then I saw that you guys actually have a secondary market, which makes a lot of sense given you were saying you're paying by the pound. You get all these hulls left over. Tell us about where those go, because I saw something about the Statue of Liberty being cleaned with black walnut hulls.
Yeah, yeah, and really, we've got two different things here. The hulls are the green and black part of the nut, and that's removed before we buy the nut. So that's that kind of a soft and green part that it oxidizes and
Turns black when it
it turns
oxidizes,
black.
right?
It's got some actually some interesting uh, health benefits. Health food stores sell black walnut hull extract as a cleanse. So it's got some interesting things that you
Yeah,
can
I was
find in
going to
health food
say
stores.
in anthelmintic, if I recall, I've seen it very often in parasite cleanses where it's
Yes.
used as a worm killer, like an I think that's called an anthelmintic, right?
Yeah, I think so. And there are different claims for the health benefits for it. We know some folks that buy some of that hull, some green black walnut in order to make those things with it. So you can find those. So that's one of the interesting things. We don't really get involved in the business side of that much, other than trying to provide some of those hulls for those folks who do.
Okay,
But the
yeah.
shells, that hard shell that is around the nut, and we buy the entire nut, including the shell and the nut meat. A lot of what we buy is shell, probably 60% or more of what we end up buying is shell. Uh, Compared to 7 or 7.5% nut meat, so we've got a
Right,
lot
right.
of shell. We that's a very hard shell. We're able to grind that and to sift it into different sizes, and it works really well in blast cleaning of different metal parts of buildings, to clean paint off of buildings that they're refurbishing. And it was used years ago to refurbish battleships, to clean all the old
Wow.
paint off a battleship. It wouldn't
Yeah.
scar or scratch the surface, the metal, but it
Just
would
take
do
that
the
paint
job of
off.
cleaning. And
Yeah.
it could be captured and reused because it wouldn't break down very quickly. Other
Okay.
materials, other media, other shells would be softer and break down quicker. And yes, it was used to clean the Statue of Liberty back in early 70s or so, before the
Yeah.
bicentennial. That goes back a long ways.
Oh,
But yeah,
they're
it
not
was used
cleaning
then.
it. They're not cleaning it regularly then, obviously.
I don't think so. They haven't bought it in a while. We'll
I,
see about that. But
I'm
for the
getting that. I'm
300th
getting that
anniversary,
feeling like Liberty needs to be cleaned up a little bit these days, anyway. So,
yeah, they've got 250 coming along, I guess. But
yeah,
yeah.
hopefully.
But also now that's used in filtration media to
Oh
separate oil
yeah.
from water, because it has good qualities for the oil to adhere to the shell, and then they can backwash it, clean it, and reuse it. So it's
Mm.
very relatively economical as a medium for filtration, and works well with that. The oil industry does use quite a bit in their lost circulation material to as they're drilling for oil, to fill cracks in rocks in
They do.
the
They
area of
fill
Liberty.
cracks in rocks with these shells
Yeah,
from black walnuts.
fill cracks and faults in the rocks as they're drilling for the oil.
No
They've got
kidding.
to seal those, because that's taking
Yeah,
away the pressure
the pressure.
that you need
Yeah.
in the oil well. So black walnut shell is used in that and works very well. So
Wow.
when the oil industry is doing a lot of their work, we end up with quite a few sales of
Big
shell.
orders. It's weird, just
Yeah,
places you wouldn't expect wild ingredients to end up.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
That's right. And now they're using it on some ball fields and things like that too, which is a whole nother creative
How
use for black
how's
walnut
it
shell.
as a surface?
Well, the artificial surfaces that
Yeah,
you see, and sometimes you see the crumb rubber that comes up and that black stuff.
yeah,
There are some folks that have some concerns with that, so they're using more natural
yeah.
ingredients in that turf, and black walnut shell is one of the things that is
You're
being used.
making me want to mulch my yard with it.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard mulch, but you could
Yeah.
do that. Use the pecan shell for that a lot, I know.
Tell me about like, let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, wait a second, like I could get involved in bringing these to some of these hulling stations. Walk us
Mhm.
through, give us all the details. Like, how does somebody get involved who, let's say maybe somebody who already has access to black walnuts, and then somebody else who's maybe enterprising and saying like, man, I'd like to find some trees. Where do I even start?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, if you want to locate a buying station that's close to you, if you have some nuts and you're saying, well, where are they? Our website, black-walnuts.com, right on the front there has a place that you put in your zip code, and it'll tell you the nearest locations. Now, if you're in an area like you are that's a long ways away from any locations, they probably won't come up. But if you're in an area that is maybe 30 or 40 miles away or closer, it might have three or four locations that
And
pop up, and
there's
it'll
also that map on there too. I'm looking at now. There's
Yep.
like a Google map that has all the pins for the locations as well.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. So that does that. So that can tell you where they are this year, and you can get instructions on how to contact the operator there. It's got some phone numbers, some directions usually to the hulling location, or you can always call us. 488, let's see, 1-888-4BW nuts.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
888-4BW nuts, and
BW
that'll
like
get
Black
to us.
Walnut.
Like Black Walnuts, that's right,
Yeah,
BW
yeah,
Nuts. And we have a live person that always answers the phone. We don't
yeah.
have unless you call after hours.
I like
But
this old school work ethic you keep talking about.
it's
It's
so
really
important.
refreshing. It's so
It's a
refreshing.
it is. It's about people and about relationships. And
Yeah.
sometimes we go home and we go to sleep. Our phones are still answering, but we'll come back in the next day and pick up those messages. But during the workday, it's somebody live answering the phone.
Cool. And if somebody was, how does somebody become, I want to get back to how, how they find trees, how they,
Yeah,
what do they need to bring to you? But what if somebody it has a farm stand, store, and they want to be a hulling station? How does that work?
yeah. We line up our hulling stations usually from about April all the way through August, And
Yeah.
we're scouting the areas. We're trying to find places that have black walnut trees, a lot of them that look like they might be able to support a hulling station if there's not one there. And we'll then look for someone who could do that. We also have people who contact us and say, "Hey, I've got lots of black walnut trees in my area. They've got a lot of nuts on them. Do you need anybody? What's the process like?" And we'll walk them through what that looks like. And we sign up a lot of operators that way every year. Sometimes it's in a new area where we haven't been. Maybe we're expanding a little bit. We've done that a little bit this year into parts of Wisconsin or Michigan and Iowa, little in Kentucky, and a few spots in Missouri too. And sometimes we won't have quite enough there to justify their time in getting a machine. You need to have
Yeah.
about 50,000 pounds uh, within about 10, 15 miles to really justify your own time
Do you
to
know
operate
do
a
you
machine.
know going into the year, I'll harvest acorns here, small scale just for our own use, but we'll have years where there's just none. In other years, that's just an incredible mast crop, like a big
Yeah.
mast year. So you were saying that you sort of have years that are really good, other years that aren't so good. Do you have a sense of that ahead of time, like before you start sending out the hulling stations? It's like, okay, this year we're doing triage. There's not so many. Do you know what I mean? If my question's
Yep.
making sense.
Yeah, I hadn't used the word triage before, but I think I might in future
Got
because,
tree in it,
yeah,
so it
you
makes sense.
are. You're, you're, you see ahead of time that, wow, we had a huge crop last year, and this coming year is not going to be near as big because
Right.
the trees have spent their energy, and
Mhm.
the trees just need to build that energy back up again. They need to have an off year, um, and so that's going to happen. And our long-term experienced operators know that. They
Yeah.
also know that if they had a short crop and weren't very busy one year, next year
That next year's
could
gonna be
be a
good.
big one. And
Yeah,
they get
cool.
excited about that. So we had people calling us back in May and saying, "Okay, didn't buy very many last year, but I think this coming year could be a big crop because we saw the spring weather being pretty good. We think there could be a good nut set out there, and so we're ready to go."
Okay.
So you see that fluctuation up and down, and some of our operators say, I bought a whole lot last year. I'm tired. So I'm looking forward to a shorter crop this year, and
Right,
and
right.
sometimes that's what happens. So it's all so many different stories that people talk about, and it's agriculture. Even it's wild crop. It is agriculture, and folks in any kind of agriculture where you're relying on the natural produce of the land, you understand those ups and downs and
Booms and
fluctuations, and
busts, yeah.
yeah, you're thankful for the big ones, and you store some away because there's some lean ones coming.
Yeah, that seems like a good lesson for living in general, but,
Yeah.
so let's say somebody's wanting to get involved at, the scale of just bringing in, the crop that they find, what do you tell them? I mean, it sounds like it's pretty simple. They just putting them in 5-gallon buckets and bags or whatever and just bringing them
Mhm.
out?
Yeah, yeah. Put them in whatever you can haul them in. Bags are good. A lot of people use big barrels or buckets. I think a pickup truck is the best thing to put them in. Just put
Just
them in the
filling the
back of the
back up.
pickup,
Yeah.
fill the bed of the pickup, and bring it in, and we'll shovel them into the machine or slide them in, however the machine is set up, and that goes a lot faster. It's a lot easier than to try to handle individual bags and individual buckets. And so you can put quite a lot in a pickup. We say about 120, $130 a pickup load, depending upon how big the pickup is. And so that's not too bad.
That's so cool. A lot of people reach out to me, being in this, I hate even to say the wild food industry. We're not really it's not really an industry what I'm part of, I guess, but being in this kind of field, I guess. I get a lot of email from people saying I've gotten so obsessed with wild foods. How do I find a way to, make a living in it? And so obviously for commercial foragers, there's a big market now for mushrooms to restaurants and foraged
Yeah.
ingredients to chefs and things like that. But for people who are doing that, this seems like a really awesome auxiliary thing to do. What's the per pound right now?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this year it's up about 20 to 25% from last year
Yeah,
because
no
we
kidding. Because of the
really want
shortage
people
last year.
because of shortage last year, and
Yeah.
and honestly, we're having concerns about people's willingness to get out and pick up the nuts. So we
Wow.
didn't want to leave anything to chance. We want to have it strong enough that
Why can
it's
you say
vital.
why? Why that? Is it due to things going on today? Is it just due to general trends?
I think people are busy.
Yeah.
A lot of people are very busy, and generational changes.
Right.
People used to take the time to recognize the natural produce of the land and go out and get it. And things change. The next owner of the land may be so busy that they're not attentive
Mhm.
as much. But I think your listeners are different than that. They're
Pretty
attentive
dialed
to
into this stuff,
wild
yeah.
produce. Yeah, attentive to what's going on out there in the world and in
Yeah.
nature, and seeing, hey, there's some value to this, and this is an
Yeah.
important product, and has a market. Wow,
Mhm.
I can use it at home, but then I can sell whatever's left. And that can be a really good thing. It can help other people too. So yeah, it's this year in Missouri and nearby states, it's $20 per 100 pounds to start with on
Oh, that's
October
up quite a bit,
1st.
right? That's
It's up quite a
I was
bit,
watching
and
I was watching that news video, and they were saying, so this is from years past. I'm not sure how old it was, but they were saying, historically high at around $16 for 100 pounds. So
that
20 bucks
was
is up
true
quite a
last
bit,
year.
huh?
Yes,
Okay, that was
it
last
is.
year, that video?
That was
Yeah.
last year, right? Right. So
Okay.
usually goes
Price
up
is going
maybe
up.
$1, maybe $2 in a big year. This year it's up quite
Okay.
a bit. And in the east of the Mississippi River, because of freight being much
Sure.
higher to bring it in, it's $18 per 100
Okay.
pounds,
Still
and that's
pretty
a
good, though.
starting
That's
price.
still up from last year.
It's up from last year. So starting price, and that probably will change during October sometime. And that
Okay.
reason is once we get to a certain point, we've had all the nuts we can process this year, and then we'll be storing it for next year. And there's costs of storing and handling, so
Yeah, of
the
course.
price would come down a little bit later on. And it's kind of a market commodity at that point, a little bit. But we also want to guarantee that we provide a market at some price for all the nuts that come in until we're finished buying. And we're going to finish on November 15th this year. Some
Oh,
of our
neat.
buying stations might stop a little before that. They may get tired. We'll see how the season goes. And right now, it's starting to open up. And I think everybody's excited, and they're starting to work hard. And probably in 2 to 3 weeks, folks will be tired, but they're still going and still buying. And uh, by the first week in November, we'll have a lot better feel for how this year has gone. So
Well, that
we're
was one of
excited.
my what I was wondering, actually. My next question is, because it's almost middle October now. I'm gonna get this show out immediately, so it's gonna go out on Monday. So people hearing it still have time to get involved, right? Like,
Oh yes.
talk people through the timeline this year and what a typical timeline looks like.
Yeah. Well, October 1st is always the first day of the buy season, but the trees usually don't drop the nuts quite yet. In the northern areas, up in Michigan, northern Indiana, Iowa, it happens a little quicker. So the nuts start falling a little bit earlier than that. Southern areas in Tennessee and northern Arkansas, sometimes it's a little bit later, more like mid October. Right now, here in Missouri, we're seeing a lot of trees that now are dropping nuts. Just this week, we've had some storms roll through. What we really like to see is cold weather, a frost that
Mm.
causes the nuts to fall. We haven't seen that and may not for a while, but the winds have knocked a lot of the nuts off. They're pretty much ready to go.
That
And
contraction of freezing and of warming causes the nut to separate away from the tree.
yeah, it does. The stem
Yeah.
then will go ahead and dry up, and the nut will fall off. And once it's mature, and any nuts that fell off in June or July, and that's a typical time that the tree is doing some natural thinning. Those won't be good. So don't pick up those nuts that have been sitting
Right. Those
there
are
and
like aborted nuts.
black. And yes, they are. And so they won't be good. They'll be black at this point and dried and shriveled. So I tell people, don't waste your energy picking those up. Use your energy to pick up the good ones. So
How do you
uh,
sort that out at the hulling station? Do you have somebody who's keeping an eye on the quality of what's going into those?
Unfortunately, we really can't distinguish there. We
Yeah, sure.
look at them and we just tell people, hey, don't worry about picking those up. They're not going to weigh much. They might get broken through the hulling machine.
Oh, yeah, right,
We
right.
find that people still do bring those in, but
Yeah,
it
sure.
just matter of
But they're
choice.
so
So,
low weight. Yeah.
if they want to sell them, we end up buying them. It just
Got it.
goes into the average. They're not going to be very good, but that's part of the part of the dynamics of the business that
Sure.
we do. So people can bring those in to those buying stations. Go onto the website black-walnuts.com, find the nearest location to you, and you might want to contact the person to make sure that you know the hours where they'll be uh, taking nuts. In a lot of different places, they're located in usually rural towns, sometimes outside rural communities, and sometimes it's just quite an experience getting to a place.
I bet.
And certainly it's an experience then sometimes waiting in line and watching the nuts go
Watching
through
this
that little
happen. Yeah.
machine and just talking to the, it's just fascinating. I love the just good people that are involved in the harvest process and picking them up, and the hulling operators and their stories and their family that's involved in helping them. I visited with a gentleman last Saturday. He's operating a buying station for us. He's an Amish gentleman, and his two granddaughters were helping him there. And he was telling stories about people coming. It is a part of American life that gets lost and
Yeah.
is not focused on much at all in our media, but is real and it is
Yeah.
true, and it's
Yes.
just so refreshing.
Oh, I agree so much. Today, I was talking to my team, and we were talking about what you guys do, and saying how we'd love to try to work in a future one of our television episodes to include Black Walnut and get out there to one of these hulling stations. And I was saying, as somebody who gets to interview a lot of folks, how much I would love to be in one of these lines talking to the people, because I imagine that the kinds of characters involved in this just must be fascinating and have so many different walks of life, different stories that's brought them all there to your hauling station. But it must be a pretty interesting cast of people.
Oh, it really is. I could tell. I could go on and on and on
I
about the
bet. I
stories
bet.
just
I
even
bet.
in the last couple of days here. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
tremendous.
So let's shift gears for a second. I want to talk about the actual finished product and what you guys do with them. As I mentioned before, I've got friends who are in kind of high cuisine, and so they're always experimenting, but doing things that aren't always realistic, day to day in the kitchen. Um, Tell me how black walnuts have been traditionally used. So let's go back, several generations to a time where they were more common. What was it people were doing with them? Were they just, popping them like we see people do with English walnuts, eating them, at Christmas? Or it seems to me they were more often than not ending up in confections, baked goods, things like that.
Yeah, baked goods, confections would be the things, and homemade, not manufactured
Right, right.
at all. So, people would sit around and crack them, and sometimes eat them hand to mouth. Grandma would always want to have, or I say grandma, but whoever was doing the baking and cooking, preparing special meals, would have their special treats that they would insist that somebody crack these nuts, and then that they would use the nut meats in their cake, and almost everybody had the favorite cake, and many times they had black walnuts in them. Fudge was a great use of black walnuts.
No
Uh,
kidding.
Breads, we have from the 1800s, Grandma Sadie's black walnut bread that we have a recipe for on our website. It's kind of interesting that we've located a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
and
right.
and I have great memories of my mother making a sheet cake with black walnuts, and the cookies, black walnut cookies. A lot of different ways that you can incorporate black walnuts and other flavors into cookies. And I think the easiest thing is just take your favorite chocolate chip cookie and throw in some black walnuts,
Oh,
and it just
yeah, right.
changes it, makes it much more rich and robust and natural. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah. That floral kind of bouquet I was talking about before, it really lends itself to this kind of thing. Yeah, as you're talking, something that's occurring to me is, again, I mentioned just being out on the reservation, and one of the things that you can't help but notice out there is the reverence people have for the older generation. And it's something that's really, man, it's a really to me, it's really sad to see what's happened here in the United States, where we've almost discarded, our elders. We just think of them, culturally. It's like, oh, you guys are done. Next generation, And one of the things I love about when I go to old springs to get water, when I'm out picking berries, inevitably it's older folks who pull up and say, "Hey, wow, I love that you're doing this. I used to come here and do this with my family. I remember coming here." And it must be really gratifying to to be in a field where there's folks who have these memories associated with the product, even if maybe some younger people don't even know this thing exists. It must be really nice to jog memories for folks of times, bygone times.
It really is, and we still have a lot of folks who are in their 60s and 70s and even 80s who bring in black walnuts during the fall, and they tell stories, and they keep doing it. We had a guy here last night. He's here about 5 o'clock every evening, and he's going out picking up black walnuts. He said he got 4,000 pounds, I think it was last year, and he's
Wow.
looking to better that this year, and
No kidding.
it just connects with that so many ways. And here in our small community of Stockton, I'm just thankful that we can interact with the generations. You know, a lot of times
Hmm.
kids grow up and they grow off and they get involved with their lives and they do their thing, and they somehow lose that direct connection, that daily connection with the previous generation. And they may keep up with them somehow, see them on holidays and whatnot, but there's a lot of life that kind of gets lost when you don't do the daily things. I'm thankful my dad is still with us, and he retired from our business over 20 years ago, but he still brings us our mail, and
That's so
we chat
cool.
a little bit. And he grew up with the business. He helped his dad when the business was young, and he dad got his business degree, and then he led the business through its really growth stages, through some challenging times. And I remember watching him as I was young, and growing up as a child, and then early in business, and then decided to come back from practicing law to do this. But yeah, Dwayne Hammons is a hero to me, and continues to be. And I appreciate the lessons that he taught me, and continues to teach me too, even.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the memories that he connects with black walnuts, and the whole family tradition that we live, but we also see it lived in so many other people here in this local area.
I wish you could see, I'm sure you can hear it in my voice, but I wish you could see the smile on my face. It's just I'm feel so like my heart feels so warm to hear this because it's so this isn't the kind of thing that's happening. There's almost a sense like your company is like somehow gee, I don't know what the word is, but it's like as if you're from another time and you're still here. You know what I mean? It's like this kind of work ethic, family orientation, connection to the landscape. This stuff doesn't usually make it into the modern marketplace. I guess is what I'm trying to say. That you guys have a viable model that you can still work with people at the individual level, but can actually get the product into the modern marketplace. It's a formula that not many folks who work with wild ingredients are able to crack. And it just makes me really happy that you haven't had to compromise these really beautiful aspects of your business. So congratulations to that. I just want to say.
Yeah, yeah, and it's gratifying to hear you say that, because we do our thing, and we simply do it the best we can, the best we know, and we deal with practical issues and practical problems, connecting what we do with the trends of consumers, the food trends that are out there. We think we connect with those trends fairly well if people just are aware of it. And
Hmm.
the awareness of products is a challenge for us. The food safety kind of things we've been able to keep up with, the technology of processing things keep up with, even as the challenges of a smaller crop, and a smaller industry seem to be uh, a real challenge. But yet, we're thankful to keep going, and we think we've got a product that just has not just a story, but it has some goodness to it also, that
Yeah.
just hasn't been completely discovered yet. And so we keep going every year. We hope, okay, it's going to
Yeah.
break loose now. But
Yeah.
we're thankful to just keep doing this, and providing the market for people who have black walnuts to sell, people who love the flavor of that black walnut, the memories they create, people who are able to use the black walnut shells in a lot of really special applications that there's
Hmm.
just nothing else that will fit well
Yeah.
with.
And
And
it's a
the
natural
people that
material.
Yeah, and the people that work with us also.
Yeah.
We've got a great group of people here now. We always have. I tell our folks here, we stand on the shoulders, on the foundations that people have laid before us. Not just my family, but so many people in our rural community, and the values that have been applied to our business. Just their natural work ethic, the values of character, uh, doing a good job, showing up for work, you know, caring
Hmm.
for each other,
Yeah.
those kinds of things that you see, and you know, it's not all the time, but it's enough that it really, I feel like, is something that we can say is pervasive, and that we want to continue in our business. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so thankful to be able to keep doing this. And I'm relatively young enough that I got a few years ahead. We have a vision for the long-term future of our business. We
Tell
think
us
that
about it.
there's a lot of years ahead. Well, I think certainly continuing to cultivate the wild aspect, the wild harvest, uh, and while we're also encouraging people who have land, who are farmers, to include growing black walnuts
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
managing them for nut production as a part of their farm operation. So,
Right.
having a cash income that comes from that, making that possible to help work with them. And so, long term, more of our uh, uh, product may come from those. But that's going to be 20 to 30 years away because it takes a
Yeah.
while to
Right.
get a
Right.
crop from a
Right.
tree. So we'll do that, and then continue with the processing for the volumes that we would need to meet the market demand. But I really think that there is a great opportunity for people to appreciate the bold flavors, the wild flavors of black walnuts in more food products. It's a higher price, yes. It's not something that is quite as familiar. It's got that unique flavor that some people find objectionable on first glance. But then
Hmm.
after a while, their taste buds say, this is actually pretty good. And
Yeah. A little
then they
more
get used to
interesting than
it.
the old
And
English walnut.
right, right. And so we're finding that to be true too, especially if they try it in something. They wonder, "Ooh, what's that flavor? That is
Yeah.
something special," and they really like it. So I think there's some great opportunity as people can become more aware. Our challenge: we're a small company. We don't have a lot of dollars to go out there and just keep promoting and be on national networks and TV and whatnot. So, getting product awareness is a big challenge in the face of the walnut that is so well known and so
Yeah, right.
prevalent.
Yeah, it's got all those marketing dollars. Well, I'm going to do my part to tell people about what you guys do and make sure, I sort of alluded to it before, but, in the wild food foraging world, you guys are known. And I just want to, I'm going to, do what I can to let people know about what you guys are doing. It gets me really excited. A lot of, as you can imagine, with a lot of wild foods that could command some market share, they aren't always sustainable to harvest. But what I love about this is people can go out and they can pick up every nut on the ground and they're not diminishing those trees in any way. This is a sustainable thing that you guys can keep doing. And that's really beautiful. So let's talk about how people find your product and where they find you, social media, stuff like that.
hmm Certainly, anytime on the website, black-walnuts.com information, and we have a shopping page there. Our products are there. We also have our black walnuts in Walmart stores.
You do?
So we actually do in
No
most Walmart
kidding.
stores in the baking aisle, baking nuts
No
section.
way. I
They,
had no
they
idea.
they've got great value nuts,
Okay.
and they've got Hammond's black walnuts. So
No kidding.
it's kind of
Wow.
neat. But and during the season, during the fall season, many grocery stores will have them. It's a seasonal item in the produce section usually, but also Publix and Food Lion will have them year round, and some other stores regionally may have them year round as well over time.
Okay.
Occasionally we're in Costco's or sometimes samsclub.com. We've got it online. You can actually find our products also, as I mentioned, in other brands like Diamond Black Walnuts, Fisher, Best Choice, other regional brands. If it says Black Walnuts, that's
It's you
probably
guys.
ours. I know
Right.
nuts.com even does a lot of online business, and those black walnuts come from us as well.
Okay. And then I see you on Instagram at black_walnuts. I don't know if you have any other social media you'd like to plug to.
Well, our Facebook page, Hammons Black Walnuts, would be one. And so those two are the prominent ones that we try to post to. And we try to post something every few days. Right now, it's updates about the harvest
I
of the
bet.
black walnut
I
crop.
bet. Yeah.
Later on, Thanksgiving time, it'll be some baking items and some favorite treats using black walnuts and holiday
Right.
baking.
Well, Brian, it's been awesome to get this deep dive into what you guys do and learn more about black walnuts. You've got me very excited about them. I want to say thanks for your time and just give you space if you have anything you kind of want to close out with.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much. I appreciate the chance. This is a great conversation, and you've brought back some memories and some sense of appreciation to me too for wild foods and the black walnuts' place in the wild food spectrum. So it's a tremendous audience that you have, folks that are really interested in natural things, sustainability. Kinds of things and food products that fit a lifestyle that is sustainable and natural. And we resonate with that, and we're thankful to be a part of that. I tell people all of our time we're thankful to be able to provide something that nobody else in the world gets to do. And
Yeah, exactly.
we are, and because it's not easy. But God has given us the ability to keep going now 75 years, and we'll keep doing it for a lot of years ahead. Everyone is unique and everyone is different, so we're thankful for that.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. Help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show, or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. If you still haven't seen season 1 of the WildFed TV show, you can go to myoutdoortv.com, grab yourself a free trial subscription, and then check out all 10 episodes. Season 2 of WildFed premieres on Outdoor Channel in early 2022. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out our store for WildFed hats, stickers, and more. WildFed. Food is all around you.